Uh-huh. Andy, am I, okay. I want to double check. I heard from some of you that maybe you weren't hearing me loud enough. I know the slides have presented a little bit of a challenge to read for some, and I apologize. There's some interesting, well, I won't go into it. I won't apologize. We'll make sure that if you need to look at them more, you'll be able to get a copy of the slides and study them more. And the quiz you will receive for this session, you'll have time to look at the slides again before I administer the quiz, okay? So no worries, anyone. But how is the volume? That's my main concern. Okay, do let me know if that presents itself. Okay, so here I'm talking all day about let's be drawn, let's listen deeply, let's linger, and I'm kind of driving us through the day, aren't I? And I recognize that. So we're trying to fit a lot in, and just know I get really excited about sharing this, and I thank you for trying it out with me. So I know we're trying to do a lot, but we'll keep just experimenting. I also wish we had a couple extra hours, but we're going to work with what we've been given. This afternoon, I want to show you the next way we are going to practice as a group. So it sounded like many of you, even though it felt a little risky, you survived and you thrived. And so now we're going to add to our repertoire, our way of responding. What we're going to need in each triad, maybe those of you who served as timekeepers already and you feel at ease timing on your phone, doing that countdown from whatever minutes to when the timer is about to go off, right? The stopwatch or whatever it's called. If you would serve again as the timekeeper for the group, right? So we'll need a timekeeper. We'll also need to know who's going to speak first, who's going to speak second, who's going to speak third. We are going to do as we did, which means when it's your turn, you will speak. Now you're going to speak up to 4 minutes. You kind of get a sense of how long that is or how short that is for some of you. And you're going to speak. You're going to share your response. I'm going to show you in a little bit what we're going to reflect on. But you have up to 4 minutes. If you speak for only 3 minutes, that's your choice. However, I'll say something. Sometimes we think we're done, but the Spirit isn't done with us. So if your partner, if Michelle's in my group and she pauses, it's been 3 minutes, I see there's still a minute, I'm going to wait before I start responding. Because we want her, what do we want her to be doing? We want her to be listening within and just being quiet and noticing if anything else is revealing itself. So create some spaciousness. It's not like everyday life where we're trying to move on to the next thing. So sit with, even if the time hasn't fully elapsed, just give it a beat or two to see, because we've all experienced that, haven't we? Where we think we're done, yet we're not done. So up to 4 minutes. After Michelle has finished speaking, now Lori and I are going to respond, but we've got now 3 choices. This gets so exciting, doesn't it? You're going from 1, not only to 2, but to 3. You've got 3 options, one of which is not giving advice. Isn't that a relief? You've got 3 options. You can do what you practiced this morning of the noticing, holding the mirror to the other, What did you notice in the words they said or in their nonverbal expressions? You can also talk about what you noticed in yourself as you listened. So that one we've practiced. The second one, I appreciated. I was listening yesterday to the master class by Malcolm Gladwell. I highly recommend, if you're flying on Delta sometime soon, take in this master class he offers. And he talked yesterday about the value of practicing the skill of appreciating. And he said how easy it is for all of us to just critique the other and find what's wrong with something. But what about giving voice to what makes us happy in what another has said, what we're learning and discovering through what another has said? So really, really being on the lookout for what it is I can appreciate, and truly and genuinely in what the other has said. Finally, our default in life, again, just like suspicion, is to turn to judgment. There's a part of our brain, they have to make quick assessments. We have to do a quick assessment. Is somebody safe or not safe? That's how we survive as a species, right? So we have to have that judging mechanism. We have to have that quick mechanism in our brain to make that assessment. Yes? However, we are not living amidst lions and tigers. Well, maybe there are people in our midst who have those tendencies, but by and large, we can rely on the skills of our new brain, which is, instead of judgment and instantaneous, our default, overriding that with turning to wonder. My son, through his work in acting, has gotten to know Olivia Newton-John and has a great admiration for her. She recently passed in August, and he got some T-shirts. And for those of you of a certain age will remember what was on the T-shirt. It was a very popular song in the 80s. It was "Let's Get Physical." I'm believing, I haven't gotten her signing on the dotted line from the other side of the veil, but I believe she'd be on board that we could rebrand a second line of T-shirts. And it's going to say, oh, tell me more. Oh, Lori, that's great. Oh, my gosh. I get kidded a lot about the tell me more. It could be that. But I'm going to stay with the let's get, okay? Because I don't want to totally rebrand. I would really like us to go around wearing and practicing, let's get curious. Exactly. Turning to wonder. When somebody's sharing something, right, we may hear the judgments at another level, but yet, what would we really like to better understand or learn more about? Let's get curious. So these are our options. Noticing the other, noticing within, appreciating, and wondering. What are we curious about? And curious about not for our sake. Curious for the sake of the other. I call this holy curiosity. I can be curious about, when you talk about this job you dislike, I can be curious of, well, how long have you been at that job? And what's a new job? You know, I can ask you a lot of questions, but that's rehearsed information. That's not going to help you at all. You have to say that all the time. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people ask us questions. I dislike when I go on vacation and somebody said, how was your trip? I really don't want to have to rehearse the information about that. I want somebody to ask me a question that invites me to get curious, like, what was one of the surprises on your trip? Then I got to really get curious myself and listen within. So this is the kind of wondering for the sake of the other, so that they have to listen within, not to give you rehearsed responses, but real time. Are we clear? Noticing, appreciating, wondering. So, storyteller, each of us will have a chance to speak for 4 minutes, no interruption. Then the other two people listening are going to take turns. Lori will talk about maybe something she wondered about. I might say a noticing. She might say an appreciation. And I might say, oh, I appreciated the same thing, right? So we'll just go back and forth for 4 minutes. What's going to be challenging here is that, Michelle, we're used to in everyday conversation, when somebody wonders about something, we're used to immediately responding to that. If they're curious, we want to do our job, as good conversationalists, to respond right away. Here's where the discipline is in this practice. The entire 4 minutes this is all a gift to you. All of these noticings, appreciating, wondering, they're all a gift for you. And for 4 minutes now, you just receive them. Is this clear? All right. And then the third 4 minutes, you have a chance to respond to your heart's delight for up to 4 minutes. So somebody may wonder about something, and that's not really where you want to go. That's not where your heart is drawn. Follow your heart to the questions it's drawn to. Follow your heart to where it's really tapping into the genuine within you. So this is for you to discern as you receive these responses which ones you want to retell or speak more about in terms of what you're discovering and as you listen. Is that clear? This also creates safety because more disclosure is not necessarily of greater benefit to our souls. We always have to honor what's the appropriate amount of vulnerability. I mean, that's when I teach leadership courses for seminary students on this, I always say, appropriate vulnerability. We're not here to divulge the very most private things. We bring that to prayer. We are here to disclose what's appropriate right now in the group. And there may be a noticing somebody offers me, and it lands so deep within me, but I'm not prepared here and now to do anything with that. I'm going to bring that home. I'm going to work with that question in journaling and prayer. Does this make sense? So I want you to honor. That's the beauty and the freedom of this. Discernment is always about freedom. Always about freedom. That's the freedom for you, is what you choose to retell. And some things just are not, it's not the time to retell them right now. So work with what seems to be what you're drawn to in this time. Let me pause now. That's where we're going to go. I want to set that up before we do our prayer time on the reflection question we're going to bring to the groups. But let me pause. That was a lot I said quickly. I call it 4-4-4 because that tries to make it a bit manageable. Knowing each person when they speak has 4 minutes to speak, they'll receive responses for the second 4 minutes, and then they'll have a chance to speak more at a deeper level in the third 4 minutes. Yes?
Just a quick question. If some crosstalk begins or some advice giving begins, what's the responsibility of people in the group to kind of monitor that and try to get us back on?
Yeah, there I would just, if crosstalk begins, just a gentle reminder of this is where we hold one another accountable. Or if somebody starts answering a question, just give it a minute. We're just going to respond now and offer you responses for 4 minutes. If advice begins, I usually don't reprimand. The other person usually knows when they're receiving advice. And I just typically let that be, because people typically will not respond in their retelling if they've received advice. This is part of the sorting out. Yeah. I try not to reprimand. If we were doing a training class, it might be a different situation. But here we're just really trying to do our best to support one another. All right. Let me say one more thing, and then I'll speak. The last minute is key. After we've had this 12 minutes we've shared with you, and then you, and then you, we want to make sure that each person in between those, we stop and pause. So let's say Lori's turn is now finished. If I'm the timekeeper, I'm going to say, let's just take a moment and let's pause. And let's hold in prayer what Lori has offered, right? And for some of you, you may decide if you continued with this here in your community that you want to offer a prayer, but usually I just hold that in silence. There's a lot going on in our minds and hearts after we've been vulnerable like this that it's just helpful to just be quiet together. So please remember to always pause, to thank the person, Like someone had said, the importance of saying thank you, and just silently. And then after about a minute, invite the next person who'd like to go next. Lori.
I'm wondering if you want us to pick up our conversation from where we were.
Ah. What a wonderful clarifying question. I think the Spirit works so organically in our lives that there's no need for us to try to intentionally pull it through. What's going to come through will come through the next prayerful reflection. But thank you. So in other words, don't worry about intentionally weaving it in. There's no intentionality. I suspect it will come through, and you'll see it. You'll see it showing up. But we don't have to be intentional about it. Tomorrow during the adult forum, I'm going to talk about telling our most life-giving story, and a lot of people think they got to start at the beginning, move through it chronologically. And I'm going to remind us, our lives are like fractals. We can start at any moment, and it's connected to the rest. We can start at this moment of our story, and it will connect to our past, and it will connect to our future. So the same with this. It will just, through the beauty of the way the Spirit works in our lives. Okay, any other clarifying questions? I'm going to put this back up, so don't worry. This isn't the last you've seen of this or heard from me. I just wanted you to see where we were going together this afternoon in terms of what we're going to practice. Okay, I'm now going to introduce to you, some of you had asked about, let me just pop through. We're going to now explore more the role of imagination in discernment. Remember, we had all those buckets that comprise the Ferris wheel of practices, if that's a helpful image for you. And so this way of praying, this actually was a way of praying that was introduced to us by Ignatius of Loyola once again, who developed a set of exercises stemming from his own life experience of paying attention to his imagination. And he noticed he'd been wounded in battle, and he had no choice, but he was laying there recuperating. And he asked for readings. There weren't many readings in the house in which he was staying other than the lives of the saints. And so he spent his time reading the lives of the saints and then following his imagination as he thought of his own life as a saint. And then, true to the dude he had been up to that point in his life, and he'd been the kind of dude, they probably didn't have that term back in the 16th century, but he'd been the kind of dude he was chivalrous and he was a warrior and, a kind of on steroids type of dude, the kind of person we'd probably call a dude right now. And so he would also then imagine if he did these heroic feats to impress women and in battle and all of that. So he'd go back and forth between imagining his life as a saint, responding to Jesus and being a, hero for Jesus, or being a hero in the conventional societal way. Interesting, isn't it? It's through this that he slowly noticed, which do I feel driven to and which do I feel drawn to? Which speaks to the deepest part of me and gives me peace and joy? Peace and joy that lingers and results in greater faith, hope, and love. Well, the heroic feats that he could do as a soldier in the moment made him really excited, made him feel very energized. But guess what? They didn't linger. They didn't last. They were temporary. When he instead noticed his imagination turning to being a warrior for Jesus, if you will, he noticed that that not only enlivened him in the moment, but persisted. Do you see the difference here? And whenever you're making a choice, same thing. We imaginatively kind of cast out, okay, what if we make this choice? What does this look like? What if I move to Spokane? Let's say I'm discerning. Should I stay in Minneapolis or move to Spokane? And so I imagine moving to Spokane. And I notice, does that linger? Does that desire deepen? I get more information. Does it continue to deepen? Or does it just seem like a good idea because I think these people are really terrific and I want to be around more terrific people, right? So we're always looking for that dimension of when we imagine into the future the consequences of a decision and implementing it, what lasts and lingers. That's what we're looking for. We're going to do the same thing now with a gospel passage. So let me tell you, this was another way of praying where he enlisted his imagination. So he's reading the Gospels, and he begins to imagine entering into the scene of these stories. Now, I suspect all of you, now or in childhood or all the way through, have done something like this without naming it Ignatian contemplation. Name it what you name it, but this is the way the prayer practice is often named in the tradition, or imaginative prayer. So in just a moment, I'm going to read for us the gospel. I'm going to invite each of you to imaginatively enter through prayer. You're going to have about, let me see what our time is right now. You are going to have about 15 minutes to sit with this gospel and see what you discover, whom you meet, where your imagination invites you to go. Now, I believe that it's the Holy Spirit who's getting involved in the action of your imagination and inviting you into this. You're going to experiment and see if that's your experience. I'm going to tell a story, not about the gospel we're going to read next, but about my experience with this. So, in this imaginative prayer, we'll read the gospel. We're going to read it together. And then you're going to just sit with it. You're going to enter into the scene. You're going to try to imagine what time of day was it, what was the temperature. You're just, to the best of your knowledge, it doesn't have to be historically accurate. Just follow the lead of your imagination. And then notice the different characters in the story as you enter in. And pay attention to who is it that is wanting to interact to you, or you want to interact to them. What do you want to say to one or more of the characters? Now, many of you will think, I better go up and let's talk to Jesus first. And that may be where you're drawn, but you're going to be surprised. You'll be surprised how many of you, even if you think that's the thing that should be done as a good Christian, it may be the person way off to the corner, the waiter who's, serving the wine or something that draws your attention, and you want to either go say something to them or listen to them. Is this making sense? So you're just going to follow it in your imagination, see where it invites you to go, and either what you want to say to one or more, and or what one or more want to say to you. Okay, here's my experience. This was quite a number of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. My son was going through a very difficult time. I was having a very difficult time, as we do when our kids are struggling. And so I thought, the story of Jairus and his daughter. That's the one I'm going to pray with. And this is not usually a one-shot deal. We can stay with the gospel and keep staying with the same story if we really believe it's going to speak to the specifics of our situation. And so I read the story of Jairus and his daughter, right? The synagogue official who goes and asks Jesus, come to my home, heal my daughter, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, this is really clear-cut. I entered into this story because it's not a daughter, it's a son. I'm in the place of Jairus. Got to get Jesus on board. Let's come to the home. Seeking healing, seeking guidance. What happens? I'm already going to tell you something surprised me. As soon as I start entering in prayer, I, as Jairus, go to ask for Jesus' assistance. Jesus is walking with me into the room where the 12-year-old daughter is. And all of a sudden, the 12-year-old daughter is me. All right. So, surprise. What do I want to say as that 12-year-old daughter? What are the characters saying to me? Clearly, Jesus is saying to me, girlfriend? No, that's not the talk, but that's the 21st century translation. Diane, you too have more areas to heal in yourself. It's not just the healing for your son. I seek to heal you more. And so that was the experience in prayer, was this surprise, and all of a sudden the script had flipped, okay? So after the time in prayer, then what is it I want to share with God about that, what that story stirred in me, right? I had this surprising thing. The insights, feelings, fears, questions, memories, hopes, desires evoked. Well, what it stirred in me is, Lord, you are calling me to greater healing. I ask for greater healing. And I believe you're going to heal both me and my son through this time, through this difficult experience. Is this making sense? So you enter into the gospel, you follow where your imagination takes you, and then after you've had that experience, 10, 15 minutes, then you come back and you reflect on, okay, what do I want to share with God as a result of this experience? This is where we're going to go with the gospel today. So this weekend, Pastor Lori and I decided on this particular gospel. We're focusing so much on the practice of discernment and the way of being, developing the eyes to see and ears to hear, which Jesus calls all of us to. And so this is a particularly precious story for me. This is my go-to. I'm always asking, oh, Lord, help me to see or help me to see again. And I suspect each of us have some of our favorite gospel stories that keep offering more revelation. So I'm going to invite us this weekend, as we look at this theme of what next and where God is calling us, to draw upon what this story may be revealing to each of us. So once again, I'll just invite you. You've been hearing a lot of words from me. If you would, just let's reground our feet on the floor. Let's just notice how the Spirit meets us through the breath moving in and through, cleansing our bodies. And I'll then invite you, I will read the story, and please notice what you find most helpful. For some of you, you may choose to read along with me. For others, you may choose to just let the word soak in. Do what you find most helpful. So this is a reading from the Gospel of Luke. As he approached Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard a crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. Then the blind man shouted, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Those who were in front sternly ordered the man to be quiet, but he shouted even more loudly, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stood still and ordered the man to be brought to him. And when he came near, he asked him, What do you want me to do for you? And the man said, Lord, let me see again. Jesus said to him, receive your sight. Your faith has saved you. Immediately the man regained his sight and followed Jesus, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, praised God. All right, for the next For the next 10 minutes, I've got 125. I would like to just invite you to stay where you are, or if you would prefer, if it's helpful to you to find a spot, just to enter into this particular scene and notice to whom you are drawn, to whom you'd like to speak, and or to whom you'd like to listen, who has messages for you. Encounter the characters in this gospel. Do not worry if there's only one character who asks for your attention the entire 10 minutes. Just stay with where you're being drawn in this story. And then I'll invite us to just take 2 to 3 minutes to, after we've imagined, to notice what it is we want to say to God in prayer about what this story may be revealing to us. So let's take 10 minutes. I'm going to be quiet. I'll ask all of you to be quiet. And if it helps you to move to a different part, just to enter into this more fully with your imagination, please do so. And in 10 minutes, I'll check back in and I'll just put up for us the closing question about reflecting on this time in imaginative prayer. as you're ready, and you may prefer to have much more time to stay in this scene, know that it will be there for you to return to. But let's just take 2 to 3 minutes here. What is it you want to share with God about what this story is stirring in you? Perhaps an insight, a feeling, a fear, a question, a memory, a hope, a desire, perhaps all of the above. What do you notice this stirring in you? Let's just take 2 to 3 minutes to try to name that. All right, friends, I thank you for this deep collective silence we've entered into together. And it's so beautiful that I don't want to disrupt it. Although I also know that some of you may like to have a bit of a break to get a beverage or a bio break before you meet with your small group. So I request that we maintain this silence as we move into our small group so that we can keep the focus on what's stirring within us as a result of this prayer experience. This is going to be a really great, it's going to be like a monastic retreat at this moment where we're going to maintain this quiet together. So I'm going to put back up. This is our process in the handout, in the packet. If you need a cheat sheet, you will see it on one of the pages here. If you need to be reminded of what the first 4 minutes is, or the second 4 minutes is, or the third 4 minutes. Once again, if you served as a timekeeper, I'd ask you to continue in that role, and then just make sure that everybody gets a turn in your group. So it may help, for sake of ease, to return to where you gathered in the morning with your triad. Let's take a stretch break just to maybe get a cup of tea or bio break. And if you then join with your triad at 1:45, and to return here at 2:30. It's not going to be a hard stop at 2:30 because I know some of you may need an extra minute or two. So the Mother Superior and me is going to be cool with that. All right? Okay, blessings, everyone. And if anyone needs clarification, I'm just going to be here while you're taking your break. All right? If someone ends up where they're a group of 2, will you let me know, please, too? Because I'd love for everyone to make sure they have a triad. And I will see you back here at 2:30. Thank you.